Well, tickets for the Eternals went on sale this week.
Yep, we got IMAX seats reserved for the Thursday premiere.
Yeah, we've been hyped about this one for a while. But Sam, you're going to look at an element of the story that we really haven't gotten into before.
Yeah, this movie's going to give us the origins of the entire Marvel universe, and we may even be getting hints as to how the mutants will become a part of the MCU.
Ooh, mutants. This could get really interesting. That's all up next. This is Tatooine Sons.
It's true. All of it.
What is the name of the Porg on the Millennium Falcon?
Force is strong in my family.
What do you think his name is? It's a big moment.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Maybe Turbis?
Do or do not. There is no try.
Turbis? Pablo, if you're listening to this live stream, that Porg's name is now Turbis. It's a good Star Wars name.
We're not done yet.
These guys recorded an awesome podcast called Tatooine Sons. Everybody listen to that.
We did.
Yeah,
yes.
You're right. In Carnage. Let them be
Spoilers, but
yes. Well, I mean, at this point, it's been like what, 2 weeks?
two
Almost.
weeks.
This is the third weekend of Venom, so I think if you haven't seen it yet and you're getting spoiled, why are you even listening to our show? But we love you and thank you for doing that. Welcome.
Yes.
Well, that didn't go so well. Welcome to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast. We, as you saw or heard, you didn't see, you heard on that intro.
Yes, this is an audio format.
It is, and I love audio. We are the only fan podcast to name a canon Star Wars character and to be endorsed by Ryan Johnson, although we've never had Ryan on the show. We have not.
That's sad.
It's like a dream of ours.
Not yet.
Not yet.
There you go.
We'll get him in for an interview before Knives Out too.
Oh, is that it? Well,
and we'll talk about everything else before
let's
then,
hope.
too.
Let's hope
Yeah.
to do that. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, and that there is a story. It is written on our souls, and that these myths speak to that story. And that is why we are talking about the Celestials. That's going to be a fun conversation,
Yes.
For sure. And BB-Nate, you're going to be talking about James Bond, and I'm going to be talking about Star Wars Visions, The Duel. I am David. I am the dad.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, guys. And as I am every week, I'm honored to be joined by two pretty awesome, amazing sons. Sam.
Yes, sir.
What you got going?
Well, I mean, you may think that Thor is a god in the MCU, but that's just not the case.
Not the same, is it?
No, sir.
Oh, that'll be an interesting. That's probably the thing I'm most looking forward to. Even better, it'll be better than my segment. Anyway, BB Nate. We saw a movie this week.
We did,
Yeah.
and it was a fantastic movie, and I am ready to guilt trip y'all into enjoying it. I'm sorry, convince y'all.
Why would Why would we be guilted into anything?
I don't know. He's got this devious plan. I can see it in his eyes.
Dad, what are you talking about?
Well, Lucasfilm Publishing released Star Wars Ronin this week, which
I need to read it.
Yeah.
It expands the story of Star Wars Visions, the Duel. So I figured it's a great week to look at that short in depth.
All right.
So we're going to do that. Again, for all of you who are new to this show, thank you so much for listening. We hope that it's everything that you would expect and more. And please know that if you've not seen Venom, Let There Be Carnage, and we spoiled you, we actually are sorry, and we're glad you're listening to the show. Would you please take a second to follow the show on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on right now? Just open it up, hit that subscribe or follow button, whatever it is on your app, so that you get notified of every episode that's coming out. We've got bonus episodes coming out for the rest of this month, and then some fun stuff happening in November that we'll talk about at the end of the show. We've got more announcements coming at the end of the show as well, and some changes to some things that we've talked about in the past because life is hard and I have a job. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But enough of us chit-chatting. Nathan, go for it.
Yes, No Time to Die finally came out after waiting for way too long, and we are kind of split on this movie.
A little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. So we'll talk about that and see if we can keep level heads.
Have you ever danced with the devil in the pale moonlight?
Yeah, I can fly.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
The people in this room, which one is A, wearing a spangly outfit, and B, not of use?
There's only one God, man. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't dress like that.
That man has no limits.
The Daniel Craig versions, other than we'll talk about No Time to Die, obviously, but of the other four, which ones are your? Which one was your favorite?
I really don't remember them very well at all. I've only seen 3 through 4 once, and it was really quick. So I would have to just say Casino Royale, just because I'm the most familiar with it.
Yeah, okay. BB Nate, which one's your favorite?
It's a very close tie between Casino Royale and Skyfall. Both were really good, and so
interesting.
I picked Casino Royale because I remember watching. I had watched a lot of the other Bond movies. I mean, all the different actors previously and everything. And I remember watching Casino Royale and saying, "This is a very different James Bond."
Oh, really?
A very different
so
story.
Just playing into my point.
Okay, well, no, I'm just saying that the Daniel Craig version felt different than the other ones. And so I definitely like that one. So anyway, yeah, BB Nate, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm going to have you guys, rate the movie from 1 to 10 blood nanobots. So, Sammy, go ahead.
That's a spoiler, by the way. So.
I mean, honestly, I would give it a 7 just because I liked the entire movie. I just wasn't a huge fan of the end. But otherwise, it was a good Bond movie. It had all the elements you'd want from a Bond movie. I mean,
You're sounding a lot like IGN right now.
Really?
They always go with 7s.
That's fine. Dad, what about you?
6.
Ooh.
Okay.
That's pretty low.
6. I loved the first 90% of this movie, but the ending just threw me off. And then there's a couple holes from my perspective in the actual story that bothered me afterwards. I've never watched a James Bond movie and come out with the feeling that I had coming out of this one.
You were viscerally against the ending.
Well, we'll talk about it. And then walking out saying, why did this happen? Why did that happen? Why did that happen? And that's what's going on in me. So that's where I'm at.
All right. Well, I'm going to give my review. I'm just going to give it a solid 9. Absolutely loved the movie. Thought it was fantastic. Probably my favorite Bond so far. But why didn't you guys like it? Why didn't you like the end? Of course, we're going to cross over into spoiler territory at this point. But, I mean...
Well, I kind of already said it.
Yeah.
With it. I mean, the ending is... Okay, so there's some plot holes. We'll talk about those maybe throughout. I could have overlooked those. But... So if we don't talk about it, that's fine. But... There's the moment when James puts, what's the lady's name?
Which one?
His girlfriend.
Madeline Swan?
Madeline Swan. Madeline Swan and the little girl, which
she had a strange name.
Yeah, some other French name I can't pronounce. With it,
it's like
it's not
or
Matilda.
something like that.
No, anyway,
the daughter,
Madeleine or something like that.
It was something weird.
Okay, anyway, when he put them in the raft and sent them away and had to go back in, I look over at BB Nate in the movie theater and I just go, oh. They are going to kill him. He is going to die.
I told y'all that he was going to die.
And at that point, I couldn't enjoy the rest of the movie because James Bond died. So James Bond always gets away. That's the way that James Bond movies end. And that bothered me.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I have to agree. They could have found a way to go around that. They didn't have to go there with his character. I'm just not a fan of the decision to kill him off. Otherwise, yes, it was a great movie.
But he couldn't live happy.
I'm not saying
he would have to live in constant quarantine.
Okay. I was saying they didn't have to go there at all. Meaning they didn't have to poison him with whatever
then that vial
were.
would have been absolutely pointless in the movie. So, I mean, I guess they could have just
So was the mosquito line.
Oh,
I think that was just a line that they said. That hasn't been brought up anywhere else as a problem.
Because people don't
anywhere.
pay as much attention to these movies as we do. So.
Yeah, totally. That's it.
All right.
I found...
All right, hold on. You love this movie.
I do.
All right.
Absolutely.
Why?
I think that it was what, like you said, it was a Bond movie for 90% of it. And it became even more loyal and true to what the creator intended for Bond in that final 10%.
Oh, okay.
So that's also
so that's the argument you're getting ready to make?
That's the argument
All
I'm
right,
getting
go for
ready
it.
to make. So I found an amazing article saying exactly what I've been thinking since the credits rolled from Digital Spy. These are a few of the quotes from the article, and they said, after the pain of losing Vesper, of course this version of Bond would choose to sacrifice himself rather than risk losing another loved one. It was the only emotionally satisfying end to his entire arc across the 5 movies, although that doesn't make it easier to take. This is very true. I mean, he lost the girl in the first movie. You said yourself it felt different.
It did.
And that showed it was different from Bond. He did not get away with the girl in the end of that movie.
This is true.
He was not happy. He was on a revenge driven path. So that is totally different from any other Bond. Yet you say it's your favorite Daniel Craig Bond.
Okay.
So it shows how this is what Bond is supposed to be. And this was the only right way for Daniel Craig's Bond to end, sacrificing himself and letting the girl of his dreams get away happy instead of the girl sacrificing herself for him, which is what happened in Casino Royale. Another one is yet one thing that defined Craig's era was that this was an altogether different Bond, one more grounded and realistic. His Bond hurts, not always physically, but definitely emotionally. And so the fact that his journey ended in sacrifice for someone he loved makes total sense. This is, of course, what I've been saying since the credits rolled. And okay, so since y'all didn't enjoy the ending, what would you have done different?
I don't disagree with any of those statements, first off. If Bond were going to sacrifice himself, if a version of Bond was going to sacrifice himself, it would be this one. Doesn't mean I like that at all.
They said that doesn't make it easier to take.
Right. So I understand that. But I'm still just not a fan of that decision. But, oh goodness, I gotta sneeze. It's right
Bless
there. Ooh, no, it's a fake one.
I said bless you, so
yeah,
stop.
yeah, you took it away from me. What would I have done differently, though? I would have had him get away. I wouldn't have had him be poisoned, and I would have let him leave MI or whatever. I know there's MI5 and MI6, whichever one he's in.
It's 6.
6. Okay. And I would have him leave that, go with Swan, and just live off the grid. He's done with his spy days. That's good.
So basically, you would have had it returned. I mean, I'm making your argument. You would have had it returned to the way that Spectre finished.
Yeah,
where he goes off with the girl and lives happily ever after.
Yes, sure. I don't remember that movie, so yes,
that's exactly what happens.
Okay.
And yet he came for another Bond because he retired for 5 years. They will always need Bond unless he's dead. He will never have a happy life.
He'll fake his death and then live with Swan.
Yeah, I don't know that there was a way that the story was going where you could have had a different ending, which is why, 20 minutes or whatever before the end of the movie, I predicted exactly what was getting ready to happen. And I think that the story went that way. So I don't know if there was a different way to do that. I just not sure how I feel about that.
Do you think, Dad, the reason you didn't enjoy this ending was the nostalgia and the feeling of Bond finally dying after 25 movies?
There's no nostalgia in that.
No, the nostalgia of how Bond always got away and always got the girl, but now he's finally dead after 25 movies.
Yeah, I do. I think that is exactly one of the reason that I didn't like the
emotional connection.
You root for Bond to get away. He goes through insurmountable odds. He puts himself in situations where you expect him to be, where any normal spy would not survive. And somehow he finds his way out. He makes it, he survives, and he goes at the end of the movie to some bar somewhere and gets a martini, shaken, not stirred.
I get that. Yeah, how that ending is, but we can go to, this was always been put in the book since the first movie with how the first movie ended. It was him going to kill Mr. White. He didn't go to a bar. He didn't, ask for a vodka. He was searching out for the person who killed his love. So that's just always been different. And like I said, this has been something that has been put into place since the first movie. This is a quote from AP News, their article on it. They say, "This is purely the finale to Craig's serious and tortured 007 run. One that from the start has edged Bond into a more plausible reality, ushering in once anathema things.
It's anathema.
Anathema. Alrighty. Anathema, things like grief and pain and romances that last past one movie's runtime. Death loomed from the start. In his first Bond film, Casino Royale, Bond's heart stopped briefly.
That's just true.
If you remember, which doesn't happen very often in the Bond movies.
It never happened.
And like we said, this Bond has always been different, more grounded and more realistic. We knew from the beginning that this Bond was different from all the other campy, cheesy ones. Do you guys not like it because it was different from those campy and cheesy ones?
Never said that I didn't like this Bond. I've always liked this Bond.
No, the ending.
Oh, I don't know, I guess. But if you were to kill a Bond, this one would make the most sense. I said that before. I guess I'm not coming from it with a logical standpoint. You're making a very logical argument, and you're completely correct in that. But my feelings toward it are not in a logical sense at all. I just don't like that they killed Bond.
This is what it feels like when you get to have what you're experiencing right now, BB Nate, is the same thing that we all get to experience when you get an opportunity to have a real, calm, logical conversation with someone who says they don't like The Last Jedi, because you can make very logical arguments for The Last Jedi and why it's a beautiful story, why it's a beautiful Luke Skywalker, why it's more true to Star Wars than almost anything since Empire Strikes Back, all of those things. And the person on the other end of that conversation most likely isn't going to be swayed. They may even say, like you just said, Sam, I understand your argument and it makes perfect sense, but I still don't like it.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where we're at with this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, your feeling isn't right.
I'm not against them killing characters and stuff like that. I mean, was I upset when they killed Iron Man in Endgame? Absolutely. But what I think they did differently with that is they made it make more sense.
And his sacrifice in Endgame has more weight and value and impact than this one.
Or at least it feels like they set that up, I feel like, better, and to have a more emotional resolve.
If Bond didn't stay on the island, the missiles wouldn't have hit the factory, the nanobots still would have been released, and then the world would have been destroyed.
You know that?
That was made obvious like
that's
5 times
that's
in the movie.
Story, and that's the plot line of this. I don't know that they set up that the emotional weight of that as well as they could have.
I get that, yeah.
To the I'm sitting here, I'm processing the movie, and again, I understand your argument and your logic, and I'm like, well, they could have just bombed the thing before Bond got there, but they couldn't because Madeline and his daughter were there, so they couldn't have done that. So I get it. But then. Oh, well, and then, yeah, okay. I'm sitting here and I'm processing it. And you're right. You're making logical sense.
They could have blown up the bad guys' boats and then just had a demo team come in later to blow up the stuff.
Maybe, unless...
Why'd they have to use ballistic missiles?
Because they were also trying to deal with the conflict between Russia and Japan and everything else that was going on in that area. And so they find out why they find out what's on this island. It becomes a World War type situation.
Okay. All right.
And then the nanobots still would have gotten out and destroyed the world because Safin was still there. Let's talk about Ian Fleming, the creator of Bond, and his history of killing Bond and what he thinks of it. Okay. Now, this movie was loosely based on the novel You Only Live Twice, in which Bond dies. You Only Live Twice was actually made into a movie where they didn't kill Bond.
Interesting.
Because they felt like that didn't work. That was actually one of the earlier movies. The quote at the end of the movie that M reads is actually in Bond's obituary from You Only Live Twice. The quote is, "The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time." Ian Fleming wanted to distance himself from Bond because it eventually became the only thing he was known for. He even called Bond a shadow in an interview. Ian Fleming wrote this novel and one other before he passed away, so I think it was very respectful to kill off Bond, honoring what he wanted to do before he died. And it is what the creator wanted. And what do you guys think? Do you also think that Daniel Craig is trying to get out of the shadow of Bond?
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Because I don't think of Daniel Craig as the detective in Knives Out. I don't think of him as he's played a fantastic character and role, did a fantastic job of doing it in a movie called Defiance from 15 plus years ago about Jews that rose up against the Nazi regime and actually like militarized themselves and started to fight and Daniel Craig plays the leader of them. If you haven't seen Defiance, guys, you guys got to see that. It's a fantastic movie with it. But I don't ever think about Daniel Craig for any of those things. I always think of Daniel Craig as being James Bond. And it's the same problem that John Boyega was worried about with Finn and Daisy Ridley has been worried about with Rey, and that Oscar Isaac and Harrison Ford have learned how to transcend those characters and become something more with it. Although when I see Dune next weekend, I'm still going to think that it's Poe Dameron as an old guy.
I'm thinking of Joseph.
Joseph from the Nativity Story. Yeah, I do have a hard time not seeing him in that role. So I think I understand exactly where you're coming from on that.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely got a point. That is a problem that a lot of these franchise actors have to worry about. Like, you mentioned John and Daisy and stuff. So that is a good way for him to get out of that shadow. You're absolutely correct. And that does seem very honoring and respectful of what Ian Fleming would have wanted.
So in a sense, it is more Bond than any of the other Bonds have ever done.
Yeah, you make a point.
Think about it from that way. And even Daniel Craig after Spectre said he would rather slit his wrists than work on another Bond.
Whoa.
So
after Spectre?
Yes.
Wow.
He was really not wanting to work on another one. So I think that if they said, we will end your story in this one.
Here's the thing though, that quote at the end of the movie that you just read, you said it's also in the novel?
It was also in the obituary for Bond.
In the novel.
Yes.
Okay. That quote is fantastic.
It really is.
When that quote happened in the movie, I'm like, I want to write that down, get it framed, because I feel like we have spent the last 20 months of our lives just trying so hard not to die because of COVID. I'm not trying to say that COVID's not serious. I'm not saying that you don't treat it seriously. What I'm saying is we spent so much time trying not to get a sickness and trying not to die from an illness that we've stopped living in many cases. And this quote reminds me of that. The proper function of a man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time with it. And so I love that.
This was a really freaking awesome movie. Well, we might just have to agree to disagree. This movie is probably my favorite Bond movie ever. Maybe my favorite spy movie ever. Oh, wow. Dad, do we have any bad news this week?
Oh, yeah. There's a new Star Wars trilogy in development. I don't know if you guys heard that. Shuri may not be in the MCU for much longer. And an actor from The Man of Steel might be in The Flash. And if these headlines stir up your curiosity, I have some bad news coming for you next.
Hello, what have we here?
Achuta, Star Wars, Marvel, DC, Disney, Star Trek, and even sports fans, we've got a big surprise for you.
That's right, Samuel. The Tatooine Sons is proud to announce that our show is now sponsored by Cufflinks.com.
Yeah, Cufflinks.com is a family-run business owned by three brothers who are huge Star Wars fans.
But they have so many other brands too, including Disney, Marvel, DC, NFL, college football, Roll Tide, along with classics like Jan Leslie, A Dachshund Bull.
Now, as hard as it is to believe, Christmas is just around the corner. So thanks to Cufflinks.com, we just made shopping for the sharp-dressed Star Wars fan in your life so much easier.
They have over 3,000 items on the website, covering not just cufflinks, but ties, tie bars, socks, money clips, and other great gifts.
And we're saving you money. Just use the code Tatooine15 at checkout to receive 15% off everything on the site with no minimum order required.
It's such a great deal.
Yeah.
So head on over to cufflinks.com today. And remember, use that code Tatooine15 at checkout.
Impressive. Most impressive.
All right, here comes some bad news.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
Headline 1, Star Wars is giving fans another trilogy.
No way.
InsideTheMagic.net. Before you get too excited, I'll warn you that this isn't about any Star Wars films coming to theaters in the next several years. It's not even about a series of movies being released straight to Disney+. And no, as much as we would be excited by it, we are not getting news about Rian Johnson's promised trilogy that's coming out someday. This is, again, InsideTheMagic.com, completely making up a story. It's completely built off of a recent announcement that Star Wars and Marvel Comics are creating a crossover event across 3 Star Wars comics series, War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Reign, and the Hidden Empire. That's it. So comic book fans will end up loving this, but the headline is terrible. And based on that, I'm going to say it deserves a clickbait level 10.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. Headline 2. Ooh.
Letitia
Wright could reportedly lose Black Panther role over Vax views. You got this covered.com. Is linking to a giant freaking robot.com article. So we just got the whole ensemble right here.
Yep.
That is once again calling on their trusted and proven sources in a claim that Letitia Wright is on the verge of being let go from her role as Shuri in the MCU because she has questioned the safety of vaccines. The article is alluding to reports that Wright has expressed concerns about the vaccine on the set of Black Panther 2. Several months ago, Wright shared an anti-vax video on YouTube that was taken down for quote-unquote violating YouTube standards. She later tweeted about it saying, "If you don't conform to popular opinions but ask questions and think for yourself, you get canceled." In the political and social climate we live in today, questioning the mainstream narrative on anything can get you fired. Cough, Gina Carano, cough. But I'll wait until there are more.
Yeah. Okay.
There are more substantial sources than giant freaking robot, and we got this covered. 7.
Clickbait 7.
Level 7.
Okay. Man of Steel actor fuels speculation of involvement in The Flash. Alrighty. With
that sounds like a great headline.
It is. Yeah. It's a well-written headline. With DC fandom, the sequel just a few days away. Actually, 1 day away.
It is.
Less than 24 hours. Yeah. The socials are looking for anything that might suggest that a Restore the Snyderverse announcement might be coming. The headline of this article isn't helping. Of course, anyone reading Man of Steel actor is going to immediately think of Henry Cavill. And lots of fans would be thrilled if he appeared in the next year's The Flash. But this article isn't about that at all. In fact, it's about Andy Muschietti, the director of The Flash, liking an Instagram photo where, holy crap, that is a really tough name.
I'm going to say Anche Trau.
Anche Trau. Yeah. Alrighty.
Who played?
Okay, Feora in Man of Steel.
Okay, there you go.
Talks about filming in London and cutting her hair. While it's exciting and very possible that Trau will be appearing in The Flash, DCEU fans could be easily misled by this headline. So I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up.
Okay. All right. Sam?
The Eternals producer recently revealed 4 big questions about the Celestials that will be answered in the upcoming film. What is their role in creation? How are they different from each other? What is their objective? And what is their connection to the Eternals? We're going to go through the comic history of the Celestials to get a better idea of what we're getting into.
Be on your guard. There are older and fouler things than orcs in the deep places of the world.
All right, then, keep your secrets.
You're coming to us. Is as the footsteps of doom.
There are many magic rings in this world, Bilbo Baggins, and none of them should be used lightly.
Is Thanos? He's in the comics. He's half celestial. No, he's the offspring of a celestial and a deviant in the comics.
An eternal and a deviant.
An eternal. That's what I meant. An eternal and a deviant. Mm-hmm. So what is? I'm confused because the Eternals are supposed to take on deviants in the trailer.
Yeah.
So is Thanos a deviant or not?
I don't think in the MCU he is. I think that's what that line in the trailer was supposed to kind of help figure out, is because a lot of the comic fans are going to think Thanos is a deviant. Why didn't the Eternals step in? I don't think he is in the MCU.
Okay.
But in the comics, you're right, he is.
All right.
So we've got a lot of information to cover. So I'm going to try and go through it as fast as I can. All right. First, let's give a quick overview of what the Celestials are. They are responsible for creating all life in the MCU. They would go from planet to planet and plant seeds of life to see how it would go, basically like an experiment. But the creation of humans was a little bit different, actually. Humans were born from a dying Celestial who happened upon Earth. And as he was dying, his blood and vomit mixed with the primordial soup of Earth, and thus came life. So humans were more or less yes. Humans were more or less an accident in the comics, and actually were directly descended from the Celestials, which is why in the comics so many humans become superheroes. The Celestials were hesitant to let these humans continue, but ultimately decided to let them live. They experimented with the humans and their genes and created 2 evolutionary offshoots, which we'll go over real quick. The first being the Eternals as we know it. They are basically immortal with all the superpowers you would expect for a superhuman. The Celestials tasked the Eternals with protecting humanity from the other evolutionary offshoot, the Deviants.
All right.
The Deviants were actually created before the Eternals.
This just seemed like the Monitors and the Anti-Monitors.
Well, this is Jack Kirby,
which is created with Jack Kirby.
Is that New Gods?
It's Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was New Gods was running at that point.
So the Deviants were an evolutionary offshoot that they created as an experiment. They actually evolve much faster than the Eternals, like almost constantly evolving, and are extremely hostile. Crow, who we see in the trailer,
as in like, is that CROW, like
KRO.
a bird? KRO.
Is the Deviants' general and leader. We see him in the trailer.
So that's the Deviant that's talking with, is it Thena?
I think that's Thena. It's Angelina Jolie's character.
That's Thena. Yeah.
In the comics, Crow has abilities much more similar to the Eternals, actually. He's kind of like in between. He actually has to hide that from his other Deviant counterparts because they don't like the Eternals. But interestingly, you'd appreciate this, Dad.
Okay.
You know, a lot of the Eternals and stuff in their storyline goes back and explains mythology and how that came to be in history. Crow was believed to be in some history Satan Satan himself.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of where that
So the Mephisto joke works.
Yeah, kind of.
So Mephisto is in the Eternals? Not really.
Yes. We're going to take this clip and we're going to put it on Twitter and we're going to prove that Mephisto is in the
That's
Eternals.
it, yeah. Another interesting thing that happened, though, is in the comics, the Celestials actually created and implanted the X gene in humans in the hopes of them one day becoming strong enough to defend themselves without the need of the Eternals.
All right, stop.
Okay.
There's a lot to talk about.
Yes,
here.
there was a lot of information.
And we didn't talk about any of it. We just listened to you talk about.
Yeah, why?
I just summarized like
vomiting
4
gods
articles
that created evolution. So it sounds to me like this is Jack Kirby's story.
Correct.
Okay, so Jack Kirby was trying to figure out a way to synthesize a creation story with evolutionary science. Mm-hmm. And has a god puke into the primordial ooze, which creates evolution and everything evolves from there.
Yes.
Does it kind of feel like that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Huh?
Nathan.
Okay. Which is an interesting idea. We'll come back to this because that's actually really... So X-Men or the X gene.
Yeah.
With this is a big deal then.
It is.
For this to be happening in the Eternals with this.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know that they're going to go here or go there in this movie or in the future of the MCU. But it is interesting to see that this is brought in and it is an element in the comics. Nate, what are you're the DC guy.
I'm the DC guy.
So what are your thoughts on all of this?
This is just the Monitor and Anti-Monitor situation.
So explain that really quick in like a minute and a half, 90 seconds, go.
Crisis on Infinite Earths is very confusing, but at creation, there was matter and dark matter created.
Okay.
So, and then in that case, there was a Monitor and an Anti-Monitor created.
Are these like people?
Yes, this was also from Final Crisis. I'm taking from everything. Okay. And so these two people were created. The Anti-Monitor is super powerful. Okay. More powerful than Darkseid in some cases. Okay. And the Monitor is able to maintain everything and keep everything in balance with his power. Okay. And so they fight all the time.
So the Monitor is the Eternals and the Anti-Monitor is the Deviants. That's
it's like Crow. So these both came out like at the same time. So
it also kind of has this feel of, in ancient Near Eastern mythology, like in Syrian mythology, Egyptian mythology, Babylonian mythology, Hebraic mythology, you have the sons of God that are the supernatural beings that are in like this divine council that are tasked with governing the earth, and some are righteous sons of God that follow the God of either El in the Ugaritic or Yahweh in the Hebrew and things like that. Sorry, I'm geeking out a little bit, but that's interesting.
I don't know what half the words are saying, but all right.
El.
I know that, but
and then Yahweh.
I don't know what that is.
Ugaritic is an ancient version of religious scriptures from Syria.
Okay.
Okay, good question. All right. But they war against these fallen sons of God.
Okay.
And the fallen sons of God end up having offspring that we call the Nephilim, Genesis 6, 1 through 4.
So those are the deviants,
and they're and so there's some elements within that have sort of ancient mythological elements to it, which is really cool.
Yeah. So we've actually seen the Celestials before in the MCU 3 times. Wow. We've seen Nowhere multiple times in the MCU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Namely in the Guardians.
And I think we forget that that's an Eternal.
That's Celestial.
A Celestial. That's what I mean. I'm sorry.
Nowhere is actually located within the severed head of an ancient Celestial, and they harvest matter from that because it's got special powers to it. Because I mean, if you're harvesting the flesh of an ancient god, in this case, it's going to have some weird abilities.
That'll have some supernatural elements.
And then Ego himself was a Celestial, which would make Peter pretty powerful. Wow, you can write these things, you just can't say them. If he hadn't rejected, he would be pretty powerful if he hadn't rejected that power at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And then in Guardians of the Galaxy 1, a lot of the celestial stuff in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Feels like we need to watch those 2 movies before the Eternals.
A good watch. We see a hologram sequence where the Collector is talking about the Infinity Stones, and he shows the Celestial Isan the Searcher, using the Power Stone to destroy an entire planet.
Also, we've seen the Watchers in Guardians before.
Or we forget that.
True, yeah.
We do.
Like I have that conversation with Stan Lee.
Yeah, right. It's like, when they're like flying through the dimensions.
Yeah. Anyway,
why did nobody bring that up?
Well, we didn't bring it up through the entire what if. So.
Yeah, but they throw these little things in there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool
to bring it in later. So, what are y'all's thoughts that we've already seen something like this before?
Do you think that they've been setting up an Eternals movie for years now? That was the plan. That they were going to be doing this movie.
I feel like there is a 2-page paper locked somewhere in Marvel headquarters that is just the plan for the entire MCU that since Iron Man, because there has just been so many things hinted at in Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, like Tyler, who is now in Shang-Chi and is a very important part of Shang-Chi. There's just so much that happens.
Yeah,
so.
I think they throw these things in there as little kind of story hooks that they could play on later on. But what it also shows is that the writers and creators of the MCU are fans themselves in the first place, because they know what to throw in to make other fans excited.
And as a final note on that, we would love for the people in charge of Star Wars to have that 2-page paper for Star Wars going forward, because we think it could have, and maybe they do now.
That's true.
I'm sure they do.
It feels like they have for everything except the movies. It feels like the movies, they just turned over to the writers and the directors and let them just play in that sandbox and do whatever they want.
Right.
And that created some of the problems that we've had in the Star Wars era. But anyway.
All right. But let's talk, like we've been talking the whole plan of the MCU. Let's talk about the future of the MCU and how the Celestials will play into that. First could be through Star-Lord. While we know he turned down his father's power in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, that doesn't mean that they couldn't retcon this and bring his half celestial status back again. And then we kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning. This might be a little speculation gone wrong, but based on what the Celestials did in the comics, we could be seeing the X-Men come into play in the near future.
I think we're going to. I think that the Eternals, they waited. I think they've been planning on inserting the Eternals into the story at some point in the future. They waited until the 20th Century Fox deal was over. All the stuff was in place. Now they can release the Eternals into the MCU Phase 4. And as a proud part of that, bring the X-Men into Phase 5 and beyond.
I have a theory about this. And I think we mentioned this theory way back. And I think it's also further confirmed through the trailer in that I think the blip is going to cause the gene to activate. They mentioned how the blip caused the necessary energy for the deviants to appear or whatever, right? Maybe that also is what causes this recessive X gene to show up in half the population or something like that.
Wow, that's a great idea.
So it could simultaneously bring both of those
you could have it, do you think?
Yeah. And then it'll pass down through, lineage like in the normal X-Men storyline. That's my theory with it.
I love that. I think it's a really good time to throw in a dad moment. I want to go back to something you talked about.
Okay.
I am your father.
I find it really interesting that the Marvel Universe has decided to tell its story the way that it does. So much of Marvel, it focuses on humanity evolving with the X gene and the mutants, which we just got done talking about. There are countless other galaxies and beings of all kinds that are inhabiting them. And so evolution seems to be a part of those as well. And it's, all those different stories is part of what makes Marvel so compelling. But at its core, the authors and creators of Marvel understand that the story doesn't make sense unless there's some type of supernatural deity behind the scenes who created everything. In every episode of Tatooine Sons, I open the show with a statement. We believe that pop culture is the mythology of this generation, that there is a story written on our souls and that these myths speak to that story. The Celestials are a perfect example of why I say that every single week. In the depths of what makes us human, we know that the stories we tell don't make sense without a creator. And while we may want our literal world to exist without one, we refuse to let our fictional worlds do that. Having a creator helps the story make more sense. The question then we have to ask ourselves is this: if these stories reveal that in our souls we truly know that there is a creator, then what does it mean about who we are in relationship to that creator? Something to think about.
Yeah. I mean, there's always a bigger story than what we may see, and the Eternals is going to give us that part of the story for the MCU. This movie is going to be critical to understanding the lore behind Marvel and is a must-watch for any MCU fan. So be sure to be there in theaters November 5th.
Of course.
All right.
Speaking about theaters, there are two...
Hold on.
What are we doing?
Good job, Sam.
Yes. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Good job on your segment earlier, too.
Thank you. Even though I didn't convince y'all.
I know. Well, I'm not angry at you anymore, so I had to say good job. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
okay, go ahead.
Speaking about theaters, there are 2 new movie releases this week, and we won't be watching either of them. We'll explain on this week's Movie Moments.
Well, guys, it's been a pretty great week for reviews.
Yeah. It's really cool because this week's reviews come from a couple of real friends of the show.
Yeah, not people that we don't know who they are. Yeah. Or people that hide under different names and then tell us later who they are.
Right. These guys are...
Pete.
Calling them out.
Calling Pete Flexer out. That's right. Our first review is from a friend of ours from the youth group at church, Caitlin Few. Caitlin said, I absolutely love listening to this podcast. Despite my lack of knowledge in both the Star Wars and Marvel worlds, I still find so much enjoyment in hearing how great of a connection this father and his 2 sons have, all of whom find excitement in each of their segments of this podcast, as well as collaborating together to link their thoughts on the newest pop culture hits. I've even learned a few new facts and have been quite convinced to watch Star Wars myself, and I can't possibly forget that their way of seeing Christ in all of it is a cherry on top.
Oh, that's cool.
Thanks, Caitlin. That was really good.
That's a really good.
She
doesn't even know Star Wars and Marvel, and yet she likes the podcast.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And she's from church?
Yeah, she's.
I'll have to meet Caitlin sometime.
Yeah, our next review is from Ricky Pope. He's
Ricky.
the host of the Christian Nerds Unite podcast and founder of Christian Nerds Unite on Facebook. Ricky wrote, I enjoy listening to the show every week. Being a dad myself of a couple of nerdy girls, I love David's dad moments. It's also great to hear from Sam and Nate really get into their own personal favorite fandoms. You can tell you each really know your stuff and love sharing it with the world, and we all love listening. Thanks, Ricky.
Yeah, thank you,
really sweet.
Ricky. And make sure you guys check out Christian Nerds Unite on your podcast app.
Definitely.
And also on Facebook. And we are going to be making a gift to one child in honor of Caitlin and Ricky.
And we'll do the same if you review the show. You can do that on your podcast app or just head over to podchaser.com/Tatooine Sons and leave us one there.
And remember, you can review more than just the show on podchaser.com. You can review individual episodes as well.
Yeah. So please head on over to podchaser.com/Tatooine Sons. Leave us a review while you're finishing up this episode.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
New releases this week. We had a first one. This one was actually really interesting to us until we found out the
really
rating.
excited about this.
I was pretty pumped about this.
I looked at all the stuff in it, and my gosh, it is bad. This one's The Last Duel. Logline: King Charles VI declares that Knight Jean de Calugus. It's like courageous, but courageous.
It's
all right.
not. It's not like
that's what
that
it
at
is.
all.
That's what it is in my mind. Settle his dispute with his squire by challenging him to a duel.
What's a squire?
He's the butler to a knight. He's the one that helps him get in his armor and his armor bearer.
Yeah, so, cool. The stars are Matt Damon, Adam Driver, and Jodie Comer.
Who was in Star Wars.
Who was in Star Wars.
Did you know that Jodie Comer was in Star Wars?
Really?
Yeah.
You know, Free Guy and...
Yeah.
And she's Padme.
Rey's.
She's Rey's mom in Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, I totally see it now.
So we have Kylo Ren and Rey's mom. That's actually interesting. The director is Ridley Scott, very popular director.
So does Adam Driver ever do any Your Mom jokes when he's talking to Daisy Ridley?
I have no clue.
Okay, anyway.
The studio is 20th Century Studios, and it is rated R for strong violence, including sexual assault, sexual content, some graphic nudity, and language.
Yeah, it's intense. I looked
bad.
too, and it's like
bad.
there's like no way we would go see this movie because it's that intense.
Yeah.
Like it would never be.
I was really
a movie
hyped for it too because this got some big names.
It looks like a great story.
It's got Ben Affleck and everything. Like,
we're just not going to go to it with all that stuff in it.
Definitely not. The next one is one that we probably definitely will not go to.
Yeah, we weren't ever interested in this one.
Halloween Kills. The saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode continues in the next thrilling chapter of the Halloween series. Stars Jamie Lee Curtis, who was in Knives Out, Judy Greer, and Andy Matichak.
We'll go with that. Yep.
The director is David Gordon Green. That's actually kind of a cool name.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like a superhero name.
It's like a superhero name. Studio is Universal, and it is rated R for strong bloody violence throughout, grisly images, language, and some drug use.
It's a Halloween movie. It is horror. It is off
You're going to get
radar.
what you...
We don't like Halloween, and we don't like horror movies, so we're not going to this one.
No.
We had a couple trailers this week. We had the 355.
Yeah. We saw that trailer.
Yeah, we did. What are y'all's thoughts on this trailer?
It could go either way, honestly. I'm not sure. It looks promising, but it may end up just falling flat.
The new trailer that we saw at No Time to Die is a much better trailer than the original one that we saw.
I don't remember the original one.
And so I'm much more excited about this. The idea of what the name 355 is being the George Washington
Is that legit?
spy. It is legit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. You guys do know that, Washington had his secret spies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that our ancestor was one of his secret spies.
Yeah.
Like, not like a cousin and third removed, like a great grandparent or something was one of those spies. But anyway, yeah. So I'm interested about that. What do you think? You gonna?
Maybe. It kind of looks like what Charlie's Angels should have been in some ways, the new one. But we also had another trailer, Scream 5, or just Scream. That's also a dispute that Dad and I are having.
Scream 5.
Dad, you're actually the only one here that has seen any of the Scream movies.
I've seen all the Scream movies.
You've seen all 4?
What? Wait, whoa.
This was a side I just learned about like 2 days ago. I never knew that Dad has seen any of the Scream movies,
I thought that
let
was
alone
like
all
seeing
4.
Halloween.
No,
they're
it's different.
Spoofs. They're kind of spoofish.
It's a real serial killer slasher movie.
Okay.
But everything in the movie revolves around the rules of horror movies. So, all the crazy stuff like, you
wander off alone.
You can't wander off alone. If you wander off alone, you're going to get killed. They're like, everything is built around those rules and they know it.
Oh,
because they all watch horror movies,
and so the serial killer is killing people based on that. So then Scream 2, it's like everything goes off kilter from the rules of the first one because it's the sequel movie, and so the rules are different in the sequel and stuff. And so this one's
pretty interesting. It's like a meta movie.
It is.
Yeah,
it really is.
It is. They're fun. Okay, but
doesn't the first one have?
This one looks really good because it's social media stuff.
I actually watched the trailer and I'm like, this looks really interesting.
Yeah, we probably won't go see it.
Doesn't the first one have? Is it Drew? No, not
Drew Barrymore. Gets killed at the beginning.
Yeah, that's like one of the most famous scenes in all of like horror movie history. Even I know about it.
And I think if I'm not mistaken, it was a big deal because they billed her as the star,
the final girl, as like it described in that cinema.
Yeah, like she's the star of the movie, and they kill her off in the opening scene, which is actually similar to what happens with Janet Leigh's character in Psycho. She's killed at the very beginning of the movie, and she's the star of the movie. So it follows.
That's really interesting.
Fun. Same thing.
That's interesting. Now, okay, let me get to my question. Does this one seem pretty faithful to the series from what you saw?
Yeah, it does. It looks really good. I watched that trailer and I was like, oh yeah, this feels like Scream.
That's good.
Interesting. In a big way.
Okay, so the box office numbers. No Time to Die runs away with it like absolutely insane with 55.2 million domestically. I think worldwide over its whole release right now, it's like 300 and something million.
Wow,
that's insane. It's impressive right now. Venom: Let There Be Carnage ran away with a good chunk of a 31.8 million
for a second or third week. It was a second week.
That was the second week. That's pretty good. And The Addams Family 2 ran away with 10.1 million, which is actually more than I thought they were.
That movie's already is just making straight bank for the studio. They've already gotten paid off of that one with it. Okay, is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
I should talk about it then. The first experience that most Star Wars fans had with Star Wars Visions was in that short, The Duel. It's the story of a wandering lightsaber wielder who comes to the rescue of a village under attack by a murderous Sith. The question, though, is who is the Ronin?
Bulky religions and ancient weapons are no match for a good blaster at your side, kid.
Rebellions are built on hope.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
If you live long enough, you see the same eyes in different people.
So we haven't picked up the Ronin book yet. Is anybody really desperately ready to do that? I know, Sam, you're super busy with school.
I don't read anything right now.
Maybe Nate, you were wanting to do that.
Maybe, yeah. Depending on how the book is getting received.
Yeah, cool. All right. We're talking about The Duel from Star Wars Visions to get everybody on the same page. Let me give you that summary. Coming from the production house Kamikaze Doga, or is it Duga?
Doga. Whatever it is.
We don't speak
I
Japanese.
hate the fact that I can't say those words right. And director Takanobu Mizuno. When I hear Mizuno, I think about the baseball equipment that I used in Little League. They were all made by Mizuno. Anyway,
it's amazing.
It's a Japanese
your memory.
name. It's the Japanese name. It's a Japanese name. Okay. It was a Japanese company. Anyway, they made The Duel, and it tells the story of the samurai-like Ronin who comes upon a sleepy village just before marauders arrive to pillage and torment its people. Rating on a scale of 1 to 10 Sith Kyber crystals. BB Nate, go.
8. I don't really find much wrong with this. I mean, it wasn't as to the level of The Ninth Jedi, but it wasn't like I could find anything that I didn't enjoy about it.
Yeah, I'll give it an 8 just because I remember watching it and thinking, all right, if this is about as good as this series is, we're in for a great ride. And then obviously it got surpassed pretty soon after. But yeah, it's a fun short.
Yeah, I would go with an 8 too. I thought it was fantastic. It wasn't my favorite. Ninth Jedi is my favorite. There's some others that I the more I watch them, the more I get excited. But this is one that I watched it the other day in preparation for this, and I'm like, that was really good. So there's a lot in this that is really clearly intended to pay homage to Akira Kurosawa. with it. What are some of the specific things that two of you guys noticed with that?
Ronin is in a tea shop when he enters the town, similar to Mifune in Yojimbu. You had the wind rolling in on the road, pulling at Ronin's uniform, instantly brings to the mind the classic shot of Mifune walking through the dusty street toward the gang who needs to be taught a lesson.
That's good, bad, and ugly.
It's like stolen from that idea.
I watched that scene, and it just seemed like exactly like
it is.
Like
the classic showdown is pulled straight from it.
Western showdown, and you had the Solston's shop functions identically to the space that Mifune's character finds himself in as he watches the competing sides duke it out for control of their tiny village.
Yeah,
I mean,
so is this the West Side Story in feudal Japan?
Yeah.
No, well, I mean, it's very similar to Yojimbo.
I need to watch Yojimbu because that looks like a lot more interesting than Seventh Samurai.
Well, you were sick and drugged up on medication.
That's also true.
So.
Yeah.
What else did you see, Sam?
Yeah, it also brings in elements from Seven Samurai. As the villagers under attack are, circled before the bandits, just like the opening of the Kurosawa film in 1954.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a lot of Kurosawa in it, but it's not just that. I mean, we were watching the short, and the duel between Ronin and like Frankenstein's Bride. It pulls a lot from the prequels. There's a lot of things on that. What are a few things that you guys noticed from that?
The Revenge of the Sith on Mustafar. You had the duel between Obi-Wan and Anakin on the lava, on the machines that are floating on it. And then you had the logs in this on the river, which seem exactly the same. I mean, right as we saw it, both Sam and I looked at each other and were like, this is just Revenge of the Sith. Mm-hmm. But that was one thing I did notice.
Yeah. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, this one, they mentioned it in the featurette for this one. The Phantom Menace energy barriers in the final duel. Like Maul, he's getting all impatient. He's striking at the barrier and stuff. The Frankenstein's Bride or whatever in this one, she's on the log between the waterfall, and she's like striking at the waterfall, getting ready to go after Ronin. So,
which is cool to see them kind of blending. Two classic Star Wars moments with very classic Japanese film. With that was a lot of fun. The opening sequence is where things
took a turn.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it starts off with Ronin on the outskirts of the village, and the Marauders, they're coming in, they're entering the village in this big, like, massive personal carrier, and they're going, they're there to like excise their tax from these helpless villagers. Yeah, the British are coming. And then, but while the village defends itself, Ronin, he's refusing to get involved until like that Bride of Frankenstein. That's the only thing I could think of when I see her.
Yeah.
That Bride of Frankenstein Sith comes out with her lightsaber umbrella and like starts like an Inquisitor on.
Yeah, and then blends everybody.
Yeah, it was nuts. Anyway, just like the audience watching this Sith, Bride of Frankenstein Sith, assumes that Ronin is a Jedi when he finally comes in. He starts intervening with this. And then Ronin says, "It's a shame I'm not a Jedi." Sam, does this line combined with Ronin's red lightsaber mean that he must be a Sith, or is there anything else going on? Is something else going on here?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's what we're led to believe, and that's a fair assessment. I mean, you could think that, but my mind immediately goes to, I think he's a dude. He finds out that he's force sensitive, right? Because we know he is. He stops the blade between his hands, which is a very samurai film thing, right? And then he takes it upon himself to run around and protect people, like what a Ronin does. He comes across a Sith, kills a Sith, starts collecting their sabers. He makes himself a saber. It just happens to be red. I think that's where the Ronin comes from. I don't think he's necessarily a Sith.
Yeah, I think he has a moral code to where he only kills Sith, but not Jedi. So,
well, Ronin doesn't seem to really care about anything in this short. That's going on when the village is being attacked or anything until his own droid is damaged. Are his actions at that point just kind of a form of revenge? He gets ticked off that his droid gets...
No, I think that it's more of okay, well, it looks like I'm going to have to get involved in this. This won't settle by itself. Otherwise, the Sith is going to win and take over this village, or I'm going to have to intervene. And so I think that's what it shows. I don't think.
So why was his droid wearing a straw hat?
Because why not?
Because it's anime.
I ask you this: why not?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting to define Ronin. Okay, the what that means really. It's a vagrant samurai without a master. It's a samurai who becomes masterless either upon the death of his master or after the loss of his master's favor or privilege. So could our Ronin in the Duel actually be a Sith who lost his master's favor? Reminds me a lot of Maul.
That's a good point, actually. That would make sense, and that would cause him to be a bit jaded, and that's why he goes around and hunts the Sith down. That's an interesting.
What do you think?
I'm pretty sure he just lost the favor of his master, or maybe he just saw the ways of the Sith aren't the right ones, and that's how he lost his favor. That could be
he's not a Jedi.
I guess we just need to read the book.
Yeah, it does really remind me though of Maul and Asajj.
It does.
In those storylines and kind of how they were sort of rejected by their masters and ended up kind of having to go off and do their own thing. It kind of reminds me of that. We haven't had the opportunity to read. We talked about that. Read the Ronin novel yet, so we don't really know the whole story. But as we discussed in our spoiler-free review of the entire Star Wars Vision series, you go back and listen to that episode. Our interest in continuing to learn more about this enigmatic character is definitely peaked. Thanks.
Thank you. It was a good segment.
It was a good segment.
It was a good segment. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Anything else?
Yeah, the Eternals First Day Advance tickets beat Shang-Chi and Black Widow. AMC sees their biggest day one pre-sales of the year.
Yeah, it's like going nuts. This movie is
Which honestly, Shang-Chi. I thought this movie was going to be a bit of a sleeper, but I didn't realize the hype was getting so big.
People are hyped.
Said it wrong again, Sam.
What?
He said Shang-Chi. It's Shang-Chi. All right. The release of images of Lego sets for the Batman seems to suggest that the film will not be rated R, as some have suggested it would.
I never thought it was going to be that.
I don't know. It was looking pretty dark before we started to get
but
the
they aren't
going to
be marketing this with Lego if it's PG, if it's rated R.
Yeah, they're doing Spin Master toys. They're doing all this
stuff.
No,
this is not rated R.
You got to get the kids to the theater if you're going to sell
It's going to be freaky, though, I've heard. So
nice.
There are a whole bunch of amazing critters that are getting their own shorts in Star Wars Galaxy of Creatures. And I'm going to go ahead and just read what this is all about because we think it's pretty cool. You get to join adventurous droid SFR3, also known as RE. He's a member of the Galactic Society of Creature Enthusiasts as he journeys across the galaxy to learn everything that there is to know about wildlife. And we got a little quote here from our friend who was on our 100th episode, Matt Martin, who was instrumental in the canonization of Turbis the Porg. With this, his quote says, "The Galactic Society of Creature Enthusiasts was founded during the exploration age of the High Republic by scientists and adventurers interested in researching the myriad of new species found on the frontier worlds of the Republic." In Star Wars Galaxy of Creatures, we have the opportunity to show how the Society cataloged the galaxy's wildlife. I hope fans of all ages will enjoy following Ari's adventures. The stories are going to go, tell everything from teaching porgs new tricks to brushing a ranker's teeth. And Ari's going to get the answers to some of the biggest and silliest creature questions in the galaxy. The series will also have Ari studying creatures big and small. We're going to have banthas, blurgs, charhounds, Kowakian monkey lizards, minox, Nexu. We already talked about porgs and rankers, tauntauns, tukakats, wurpaks, and wampas.
Man, that's like just about everything.
It's going to go into it. Lucasfilm has also created, and this is really cool for you parents out there and you kids, if you any little kids listening to this. Lucasfilm also created activities and a certificate to become an honorary member of the Galactic Society of Creature Enthusiasts. So families can complete all these together as they watch the series. Star Wars Galaxy of Creatures is going to have a 12-episode run. There are 2 new episodes released every Thursday. The first 2 were released yesterday. They were Porg.
I watched the Porg one.
Porg one was good, yeah.
It was cute.
Never miss an episode. Subscribe on Star Wars Kids channel on YouTube. So that's going to pretty much do it. We do have some announcements. We mentioned it last week. We'll mention it again this week. New release schedule beginning in November. The main show is going to be coming out on Tuesday mornings. It'll be on your podcatcher.
Sure.
So we'll call it that. It'll be on your podcast app when you wake up. in most cases.
There you go.
And unless you're in Australia and then like at dinner time for you, with it. And then we'll have another episode that comes out at the end of the week. That'll be sort of a bonus interview type episode that's going to start in November as well. We've already got, an episode recorded with Stephen Kent about his book, How the Force Can Save the World, which was fantastic. We did an episode, it's recorded and none of these have been edited yet. I got work to do, with Pete Fletcher. From Around the Galaxy, and he's talking about kind of how Star Wars makes you a better dad, and how his dad got him into Star Wars, which is a really cool story.
That's cool.
With that, next week I'm going to be recording with Stuart, our pastor.
Yes, sir.
Talking about the Matrix and some interesting stories there, and we got more coming up in the future. So we were scheduled to, or we said we were going to be doing a DC fandom live on Bullhorn, but then I have work stuff I have to do tomorrow. I'm not going to be able to watch all of DC fandom. I will. So we'll talk about it next week. But make sure that you tune in to DC Fandom. I think you're going to love it. I think there's going to be some huge announcements.
How long is it, Nate?
A little over 3.5 hours was confirmed today. Oof. So
did they have the actual schedule? No schedule. Okay. Podathon 2021. There are some big guests. Check out the website. Just search Around the Galaxy Podathon 2021. You'll find what you need there. It's November 6th. We're going to be on from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. There's lots of amazing guests on there. We're working on some guests, so may the force be with us on that. Hopefully have some really cool stuff happening there. So I think that'll pretty much do it for this week. Thank you guys so much for listening to Tatooine Sons, a pop culture podcast.
If you had a good time listening, it'd be awesome if you could share this with your friends.
And of course, the show, it's only a small part of the Tatooine Sons world. So be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to get in on all the action and keep up to date with everything we got going on at TatooineSons.com.
Yep, absolutely. Don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss an episode. We got a bonus one coming out next week.
Yes, sir.
And you want to hear it. Remember that if you drop us a review on podchaser.com/Tatooine Sons or on any podcast app, if we find out about it, you can send it to us. If we don't read it and you wonder why, that's probably because we didn't know about it, but you can send it to us. If you do that, we'll make a donation in your honor to one child to help a child living in extreme poverty. That'll do it. Anything else you guys like to say?
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you.
May the force be with you, always.
This party's over.
I like that Wookiee.
Don't get technical with me. Joy, please. Yep, yep.